Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and welcome to this week's episode of The Knife Guy. So what are we talking about today? Today I want to update you guys on my take on clones. This is a classic topic on this channel. I've been extremely firm on it. I do not like clones. And we're going to define clone because people have different opinions on what that means. But I'm going to update you guys on my thoughts because some of my thoughts have changed. In a sea of irrational arguments, there exists a few gems. A few people I have talked to have given me some reasons to be okay with the existence of these things. So I want to share with you guys my updated thoughts, right? That's the main reason. The other reason, admittedly, that I enjoy tackling this topic every now and then is because I really love stirring up Reddit. I mean, every time I talk about this, they get super upset, but there's no repercussions for me. It's like putting a wasp nest in a jar and then shaking it up. Like they're going to get really upset, but there's nothing they can do about it. So anyways, let's talk about clones. Are there any clones on the table? No, I don't own any clones. I have a friend who I've been speaking with who does. They own many tiers of clones. And it's been interesting to talk with this person, and because of them, I was able to handle a whole bunch of stuff. A lot of my assumptions about this stuff was true, and a lot of it was not so much true, but it gave me a little bit better insight. I'm not going to share this stuff with you guys because I don't like to promote it, but the truth is that if you look around for just a little bit, it's not really hard to find this stuff, right? But clones exist, right? So what is a clone? Does that mean like somebody kind of copied somebody else, right? The Demco AD20 has identical ergonomics to the Manix. It's a clone of the No, that's not what that means. The Pyrite looks like the Bug Out. They copied the Bug Out. No, that's not what that means. A clone is a line-for-line duplication of another knife, right? There's two tiers of this, and I find the first tier, the clone tier, to be the least offensive of the two, right? If you are copying a design line for line, there are plenty of knives out there that look kind of like other knives, but there are distinct elements of the knife that, while obviously some of these things were borrowed, right, from other designs, borrowed elements of other designs do not make a knife a copy or clone. A line for line duplication would make it a clone. And these things definitely exist. There are companies out there who, usually from China, who will buy the original product or have the original product shipped to them, and then they will copy it line for line and sell it with their own logo. This is a clone. That's the factual definition of a clone. It is an exact copy. The worst of the two is a counterfeit. These are companies who will not only steal the entire design, but they'll steal the logo and they'll sell it as an authentic knife. Now, this is a huge problem, right? For people who know better, it's really easy to avoid this stuff because this type of stuff is not going to be sold on any major retailer. It's never going to be something that is sold by an authorized or trusted party, platform, whatever, right? But for people who don't know where to look for this stuff, they can easily be taken advantage of. There's plenty of people out there who have a lot of money and can buy things, but not a lot of insight when it comes to the knife world. So the secondary market is where people get scammed and taken advantage of, right? So that's a problem. But clones, good or bad overall? Well, it really depends on who you ask. Something that I have always preached on this channel is it's your money. You should be able to do what you want with it, right? And I've kept that very consistent. I've always told, my viewers, you don't need anyone's permission to enjoy what you want to enjoy. It's your money. Buy what you want. Enjoy what you want. You don't need anybody's permission, right? It doesn't matter if it's practical. It doesn't matter if it's the right tool for the job. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if you're going to put it up on a display. There's lots and lots of people that will get super upset with you for buying a knife and not using it, just collecting it. Oh, they get up in arms, right? But they forget, and it's something you should remember, their opinion doesn't matter. They don't decide. if you want to buy a knife to collect it. If you want to be like me and buy hundreds of knives and collect them, right? You can do that. They have absolutely no power over your decisions, and they shouldn't, right? Because they didn't earn the income. You did. So why shouldn't that apply to clones? That's the one thing that I've always kind of contradicted myself on is I preach that, but then I'm like, but don't buy clones because it's really, really bad, and you should feel bad about it, and you're a bad person for doing it. I want to reel that back just a little bit. And I also want to go into detail about why I'm reeling it back. This started back when I was ordering my custom through Dalibor Bergam. And something that I really, really love about hyper customs like that is that while technically at some point some company or entity might be able to kind of clone or duplicate Dalibor's work at some point in the future, it would be extremely, extremely difficult, and they probably wouldn't do it because the costs associated with it would be so high, it just wouldn't be worth it, right? But some custom knife makers, absolutely, their stuff can be cloned fairly easily. People like Dalibor Bergam, no. You're just never going to see, for example, where is that knife? Oh, it's over here. You're not going to see is it possible for a company to like make this general shape? Sure. But are you going to see an integral in Daltanium with mirrored Sanmai? Like, are you going to see exactly this at these tolerances? No, it's not a knife that can easily be cloned. And that's what I really like about collecting some of this high-end stuff. It's just not something that people can go out and buy for less money, right? But other things can. And it's with everything, right? There are parameters in terms of what type of quality you can get from this stuff, as I assumed, right? There are low quality clones and high quality clones. And there's also varying price ranges, which is interesting. It's really funny that the ranges and things are applied in this exact same way, right? But anyways, this all started when I was ordering my custom. I was looking through Dalibor's page. This was maybe a year ago, maybe 9 months ago, and I happened upon one of his posts that was a picture of a very poor attempt at one of his knives. It was a cloner's attempt at one of his knives. It was obviously a much lower quality item with lesser materials, right? And it was being sold on one of the questionable websites that many of us are familiar with. And his response to this was amazing. It was such an inspirational thing. This single post that he did almost completely changed my perspective on clones. He said, I really appreciate, if you've ever talked with Dalibor Bergam, that guy is such a wonderful, amazing person, such a real nice guy. He is so humble and just, what an awesome dude. His post said, thank you so much for the people who pointed out, that this company is making a copy of my knife. I want you to know that I'm okay with it. If somebody wants to handle, something that's similar to my work, but they don't have the funds to afford my actual knives, then maybe right now getting to handle something that's similar, that they would enjoy is good enough for me. And that was the end of that. He basically was like, yeah, that's fine. And I've always felt like I was defending or trying or like there was a part of me that made me feel like because I'm not promoting this stuff and I'm like going out of my way to argue with anyone in the comments about all the negative effects of clones, like I'm making, even if it's a microscopic difference, like I'm making some form of difference. I'm motivating people to steer away from this stuff and steer towards the right thing. Maybe kind of, I don't know, probably not that much of an impact. It's probably not really changing a whole lot, but I think more importantly, much more important than like what I was doing to, protect the integrity of honest knife makers or whatever I thought I was doing. What's important is that mindset there, right? Because he has realized as I have, I think we all kind of know, there's not really anything you can do about it, right? They exist. Like, people are going to find them. It's not like you can just not talk about it, and like it's just magically like people just are, where do I find him? Everybody's gonna search for like the way that people find them is they find out like the knife they want is super expensive. So the first thing that they do if they're not familiar with the knife world is they're like, deals or discount codes on this knife, or where can I find a cheaper one? And they find out real quick, you can't. It doesn't work like that unless you buy a clone, and eventually you find that stuff, right? Now, do I agree with what Dalibor said? Yes, absolutely. That makes a lot more sense. I would rather, instead of telling people what they should or should not be allowed to buy, which is silly, like I can't tell you guys what to buy. I can tell you my take on it. I can say I don't like them, because the truth is that they do, like clones and especially counterfeits, really do hurt, the part of the knife world that is good. People making honest designs, original designs, even if they do borrow elements from other designers. That's something that is common and not something that most knife makers and designers have an issue with. They actually many of them love hearing when, they have inspired some other knife maker and there's some element that is not copied. Like there's a difference between like borrowing a minor element, a minor design element of a knife, and somebody copying a patented locking system, right? That's a problem. You can't just be like, oh, that's the coolest new locking system ever, where I'm just going to take that. No, the right way is there's a patent on it, and then once the patent expires, then sure, right? A lot of people get mad at me for having that mindset. There has to be a system in place that's fair. Otherwise, the world would be chaos, right? So, yeah, like I agree with the rules on that stuff. I agree that if a patent's in place, you back off. And then, once the patent ends, then you're good to go. That's the system that's in place to keep things from exploding into chaos, which has far worse repercussions than just somebody copied somebody, right? So, yeah, I do agree with that. But it does impact the knife maker initially, right? In the way that if you have the money for the real thing, you could buy it, and that will benefit the knife maker. Let's say Rick Hinder. You could buy a Hinder, right? But then you find the clone, and you're like, I'll just buy this and save some money. Well, then the person who came up with the design, maybe it's not, a lot of people, I have to choose a knife maker that people like collectively. Like there are people who love Hinder and people who don't like him, right? So the point of it is lost if I choose somebody that not everybody loves. Let's just imagine some knife maker everybody just loves, right? So that I get my point across. They don't get the money. Whoever made the clone gets the money. And the people who are making the clones are usually not people with the highest integrity. Certainly not people who are taking that money and putting it back into the knife world in some way, right? So yeah, but you get to experience the thing that you really wanted to experience, and you didn't quite have to pay as much, right? And what Dalibor's talking about is maybe initially this does not result in a sale for the rightful designer, right? The people who put in the work to create the thing, right? The blood, sweat, and tears that go into the prototypes and all the different designs, right? And that like in a lot of cases, it's an American company. You're taking money away from an American company. You live in the United States because you wanted to save a buck. You're taking money away from an American company and you're giving it to a Chinese company. That's what a lot of people have issue with, right? Initially, this is a problem, but down the road, as many of you have found out, a lot of people who buy clones will buy clone after clone after clone after clone, right? And initially it's like, whatever, I'm saving money. But then down the road, at some point, many of them, not all of them, many of these people who buy these clones start to get a craving for the real thing, right? A lot of them realize the amount of money I've spent on these clones that I no longer care about or don't use or they're piling up or whatever. I could have just bought the thing that I wanted, right? And so they'll turn around and sell. You take a pretty big hit on the vast majority of clones, right? Massive hit, because there's not really the same secondary market for them. A lot of these people find out they sell their entire clone collection. They have one or two, authentic knives that they can enjoy, and that usually, depending on what you buy, will hold their value much better and allow you to, if you go that route, if you go the secondary route. I understand there's a million variables there, and I'm not really here to discuss that. That can go a million different directions, right? Some people do this. Some people just buy clones and they're just happy with it. Some people just buy one clone, right? Whatever. It's your money. You can do whatever you want to do with it. But there is truth in what Dalibor said there. And that's the part of my opinion that I have changed. It's rare that I change my opinion on something. It's really rare. But this part, this Dalibor's take, I think that has some merit to it. It could be the path that leads to opening the door to actually purchasing something. Sometimes clones help people make decisions. The copies, the cheap stuff, helps people make decisions. And I not only do I understand that, I kind of like that. So here's the part 2 of this for everybody who's still here with me. If you're gonna do it, if you're like Metal Complex, I know you don't like this stuff. You know, I know it gets your feathers ruffled. It gets you, it gets you feeling saucy. But I'm gonna do it. So what should I do? Something that you'll hear a lot by people who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about is, why would I spend? Let's use the Shirogorov. Here's a knife that's been cloned. It's been cloned into oblivion. I think I've handled 4 different tiers of clone on the F95, right? People who don't know better will look at this and say, obviously, Shirogorov is ripping everyone off. I can buy the same knife for $30. That is, if you turned this person's head sideways and blew across the top of their ear, it would sound like the same thing, like when you do that to a beer bottle. That's the noise it would make, because there is nothing in that person's head. That's a bad take, and if you're new, don't listen to that, because it's not true at all. There are different tiers of this stuff. While it is true that Shirogorov knives are massively marked up, and there's probably not all of that knife is made in Russia, right? Which is where those knives are made, right? There's probably a big percentage of that knife is outsourced in some way, I'm guessing, right? Especially after handling some of these clones. But are there different tiers of quality? Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, it's so bad. So your $20 to $50, $20 to $70 clones, which are anywhere from, oh my God, this is a joke, to this make a decent budget knife, right? That's your initial tier. I handled a version of the F95 that was titanium and D2, right? And that, I think, is the example that people like to use and say, Shirogorov overpriced, you could get the same thing, a $50, a $60. Those people won't tell you that, number one, the blade steel's not the same. Number 2, the titanium's not finished the same. Number 3, there's a lot of little tiny details in the knife that are not identical. And a lot of the elements of the knife are poorly finished or just not finished. Like, it's precision done. But little things like corners and edges are just, they're not right, or they're sharp, or it's clearly like, yeah, we made it out of titanium and we made, the blade steel's D2. Never mind how it's heat treated, right? Because you're not going to know that. And then we just didn't put the Shirogorov logo on it. And here you go, So in that sense, you're experiencing essentially like, it's like, imagine the F95, but like it's PS1 graphics. Like, that's what you're experiencing. It's not that the tolerances are bad. It's that the company who cloned it just was like, how do we take this idea and just make it as inexpensive as possible, right? And so those are the ones that people are getting and confusing for identical quality. Usually the people who say that have never actually handled a real one. So while the real one is dramatically overpriced, it is still a substantially higher quality item than these base clones. Now there's the real bad part of it. There's the $30 ones. Stay away from that stuff. If there's a company that is cloning a $500, $600, $700, $1,000 knife and they sell it for $30, it will be trash. It will be yucko, disgusto, barfo, poo-poo town trash. Like, this type of stuff would not impress a 7-year-old. It's really, really, it's almost comical that they actually trick people with this stuff, right? Some of the nicer entry-level clones are right around that $50 to $70 price point, usually around more towards 70. Then there's another tier. There's some stuff in between, but then there's another tier, and this is the truly impressive end of the clone world. This stuff gets up there 200, 300, sometimes more, right? It's still a Chinese company, but we're looking at legitimate materials. Now, there are a lot of channels out there that have tested blade materials from some of these clone companies, and they turned out to be real. Your S35VNs, your M390s, and some of your more exotic blade materials, or S90V. Yeah, and not only real, but heat treated properly. In this territory, you're paying a lot more money. This is something, it's funny that the clone world will actually teach a lot of people, like, yeah, some of these processes, even though it's still substantially less expensive than the real thing, a lot of these processes are obviously much more expensive than people think, right? Like the guys who say, for that much money, you could buy a gun. A knife couldn't possibly cost as much as a gun, right? It's funny because then they look into the clone world and they try to get a knife for what they think is like the authentic, like the real price, and everybody else is just ripping everybody else off, right? And then they learn like, oh, even with the clones, like to get the real thing, you actually have to pay substantially more money, right? So then I wonder, like, do these people have arguments with themselves about which clone brands have become, too big for their britches? Like, this clone brand's clearly starting to really look at their prices are out of control. I'm going to go with the clone of the clone brand because they're obviously just trying to do good by the community. So I'm a smart consumer. It's really fun. The irony of that is absolutely hilarious because I know that there's some Reddit posts of people arguing about that silly little jar of wasps is just being shaken by their own community. But people find out that there's like a higher tier of clones. And this has always been the case. And 10 years ago, I handled an S tier clone. And admittedly, it was really good. I was like, it's still off. A couple little things are off. But it's really good. Pretty impressive, right? It's just only gotten better. So with certain things, obviously something like this, the F95 is much easier to clone than something like the Lesbar Aviator Bifrost. You're not going to see a clone of this, not anytime soon. Not line for line and not material for material, right? You can get the silhouette made out of something, right? A lot of times, like the really cheap ones, it's steel and D2, and the D2 is just not heat treated. And then there you go. And then people say, I got it. I got the knife. It's only $30, right? That's what you're getting. You're getting like the bottom of the barrel essence of it, right? But on the other end, you really can buy, in the case of something like the Schuergraf F95, or even like the Sebenza, right, the XM18, you really can buy a nearly identical, properly made clone for less money. So why would you buy the real thing? Just got to add this in here real quick. Again, the other thing that people forget about is oftentimes when we're comparing an American authentic product to a Chinese clone of it, the reason for the massive price difference between the incredibly high quality clone and the authentic USA knife is the fact that the clone is made in China. And people like to gloss over the fact that the price reduction, the massive price reduction, is because it is made in China. The Chinese labor costs are actually that much lower. Again, when we are comparing the very top tier Chinese clones with the authentic American product in question. Anyways, back to the video. Well, a lot of people buy the real thing because, again, they want to give the money to the real original designer. And a lot of it really boils down to, I don't want to give money to a Chinese company. I want to give it to a USA company, which is your own. I'm not saying I'm on one side or the other of that because I review Chinese products as well as products from all over the world. That's a you decision, right? But yeah, there really does exist some of that stuff. And it is pretty impressive. Like how close they can get, right? I just want to acknowledge that can absolutely be the case. It's not going to be enough to justify it to everybody, right? For some people, you might look at the Schuergraf, like there's a sub-argument. You might look at the Schuergraf and say, I'm choosing between giving money to a Russian company who might be outsourcing part of their parts to China and a much less expensive, nearly identical product that is made entirely in China. What's the issue there? That's a good point. I mean, like the biggest issue there is if you're really like zeroing in on the the Shirogorov knife, like that was an original design. Like, I don't want to take money from somebody who deserves to have it with the original design and give it to a company that's literally just making the exact same thing because they're making it, and they're able to charge less because they are making it in a place where it's going to cost less money, right? And Shirogorov, I feel like, is this, again, speaking for this person who might be making this argument, Shirogorov is clearly taking advantage of customers because they're marking these things up so much higher than they need to, right? Yeah, rational arguments, right? These are legitimate rational arguments. And perhaps the whole idea is just to get the Shirogorov without the true Shirogorov essence, but you just want it for less. Can't really argue with that, right? So, yeah, sure. But again, the whole, I can buy the same thing for $70 or 50. No, you can't. It's not going to be the same thing. I've handled the stuff that really is the true, like, holy crap, this is almost identical. That stuff will cost you. You will not get the real duplication for 50 to $70. You can tell yourself that, but it's not going to happen. And the reason is because duplicating it exactly, material for material, putting a high quality heat treat on it, doing the high quality milling, all of that stuff really is expensive. And people, I think there's a lot of people who just don't want to accept that that's true. They want to buy a cheap knife. They want, to reaffirm themselves in the thought that cheap knives are the real deal and everything else is just like a fantasy and a ripoff. And it's, sometimes it's just something that people don't want to admit, and they don't want to experience it because they don't want to be proven wrong. But it's just funny and ironic that the clone world itself can actually prove this to people, right? My own knife, the Excalibur, it's not out there yet, right? A lot of people will say, I'm just going to wait for the clone. I love that. So this will inevitably get cloned. Inevitably. What am I going to do about it when Excalibur gets cloned? Nothing. I'm not going to do anything about it. Why? You think I would like scream and cry? My knife got cloned. No, absolutely not. It's going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. The main reason that it's okay, from my perspective, is number one, this is a prototype. My final Excalibur doesn't look like this. This is prototype 1 from a long time ago. This is not the one that's going to go up. But when it inevitably gets cloned, it will be some sub variation of it. The actual full-on Excalibur is a knife that's already made in China, so it's already been reduced in cost because of labor, right? It's made by Kunwu. It's also an integral. It's also truly DLC coated. The blade is Vanax, which is also DLC coated if you choose for it to be that way. And then we have the Timascus parts. So if another Chinese company wants to do exactly that, the price will be identical if they actually copy it. That's how low we got that price tag. Now, some people don't want to accept that or don't want to believe it. But my guess is when it's cloned, it will be copied in a way that allows them to reduce the price tag. So little elements that are present in the real thing will not be present on the duplication. Perhaps it's the Timascus pivot collars along with some of the edges not being exactly right. I very much doubt that it'll be an actual DLC coating. Maybe they'll change the blade steel. It'll be something that allows them to get the price down. But inevitably, it will be enough to convince some people to pick up the clone versus the real thing. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm not really concerned with, like taking them down or, going into this big fight. What I'll do is continue to offer less and less expensive, variations of my knife over time that have lower costs in terms of the the overall design. Like instead of doing an integral, we'll do a sandwich construction version of it in LMAX, which will cost less money for us to create. So it'll cost people who want to buy it less money overall. And then further down the road, as I stated many times, we'll do a budget version of it or a substantially less expensive version that's made out of G10 and 14C28N. We'll do that, right? I expect all of that stuff to be copied in some way and little things to be changed that allow some of the cloners to charge less for it. This is just part of the ecosystem, right? I guess it's irritating. I'm not going to pretend that it wouldn't be annoying. Yeah, but I can't really do anything about it. So whatever. Basically, the full message here is all you can do is just try to make the best product that you can. And continue to either evolve that or bring your audience, the people who really want to support you, right? Just continue to bring great products, the stuff that they want to buy, right? Your true buying audience will continue to buy your stuff if it's high quality, and they feel like they're supporting somebody who's doing right by the community. And that includes being fair with pricing given the country of origin, the materials used, the number of processes involved with creating the product. Essentially, if you're delivering a fair price tag for the exact item that you are selling, then the community will take notice of that, right? And if some people want to buy a clone of this product and they're okay with certain elements being lesser or not exactly the same thing, that's their choice, not anybody else's. It's their choice. Clones have tiers. Not all clones are created equal, and the world where every other company is just greedy and you can buy the exact same thing for $50, that's a fantasy made up by people who don't know any better. So if you're gonna do this, you got to look into it. You got to be careful. There's no such thing as just a really good deal. If it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true, right? There are tiers, and the creation of these things is far more expensive than I think some people realize. But ultimately, you should just enjoy what you're going to enjoy. I can't personally enjoy clones. I get nothing from it. Even the most impressive F95 clone that I handled, I was like, wow, I don't know if I'd be able to tell the difference. If these were laid out on a table, I don't know that I'd be able to tell the difference, right? And right there's going to be plenty of people saying, then you're stupid for paying so much more money for the authentic one. You're being taken advantage of. You can make that argument, but that's the thing. I want the authentic one. I do like the part of me that is deciding who to give my money to. I want to give it to the person who created the original design. Maybe they are overcharging for it, and that irritates me. But it doesn't irritate me nearly as much as the type of person who will simply steal an entire concept and then sell it to a community that they care nothing about, right? You're being taken advantage of one way or another, right? It just depends on which side of that you're offended by, right? So we all have our own reasoning. And, who thinks who is stupid or irresponsible or, prone to being taken advantage of, it doesn't matter. We're all human beings. What matters is that you enjoy what you spent your money on, right? And the choices you make afterwards are your own. You don't need to ask permission, right? Nobody, especially people in comment section or at the very bottom of that, people on Reddit, you definitely don't have to listen to the Muppet Babies on Reddit. They decide nothing. You can buy whatever you want to buy, right? And whatever path it leads you down is the path that it leads you down. But there are certain knives that will be much, much, much harder to clone, right? For example, I think there do exist some arch nemesis clones, right? Do there exist any arch nemesis clones with chevron milling, a contoured zirconium frame with the texturing, the zircotite inlays? Absolutely not. Nowhere, exactly nowhere on the internet exists a clone of this knife. They can't do it. Probably some company could figure out how to do it. The problem is that the processes and materials are so expensive that even a perfect Chinese clone of that thing would cost so much money that their target audience would not be interested in it, which is beautifully ironic. I love that. That's why we don't see that type of stuff. That's why if you do find a clone of some of this hyper exotic stuff, it's a very dumbed down version of it because they are bound by parameters, just like the rest of the industry, right? So if you are somebody like me and you don't like clones and you want to buy things that if the idea that
I guess it doesn't really irritate me that there's a clone, like almost a perfect clone of the F95 out there. It doesn't really, because I have what I want. Like, why do I care if somebody else? But if you are bothered by the fact that some of your collection can be had for less money in a clone, if that bothers you, then what you want to do is buy things that have like truly special design elements, right? Really unique, like sole authorship materials, or unique or hyper complicated, hyper expensive processes or machine processes like the Les bar, right? Stuff like that. It is not a good idea to buy clones and then try and, like, if your goal is to buy clones to save money while you're buying, selling, collecting, trading, all of that, I think you're going to lose money at a higher percentage, right? If the goal is just to get a good tool, right, that costs substantially less than the authentic thing, and you're just going to buy one or maybe two, sure, yeah, but that's not what's going to happen. If you're buying clones of super high-end knives, the seed has been planted. You're going to eventually want more knives and potentially the real thing. It will just cost you money in the long run, right? So, yeah, that's my updated take. I still don't like them, but I think that there's a purpose for their existence and some good can come of it. Just remember, there are tiers. You will not get the real thing for $50 or a duplication of the real thing. But if you're happy with it, if you're happy with that thing that's not quite exactly right, then that's fine, right? But just be careful what you buy. Absolutely. You are buying from companies who are much more likely to try and deceive you than companies creating real products and just marking their prices up. That's an important thing to remember if you're going to dip into that market. Anyways, that's going to be it today, guys. I know that this is a hot topic and it's going to spark a lot of conversation. It always makes a lot of people mad. Just remember, no matter how mad you get, I'm going to cover this topic again because I like to talk about it. And I think people who get super upset about it are extremely hilarious. I'm sorry. I'm just hyper entertained by that. It's really one of my favorite things to watch unfold. So don't make yourself a target. But you, of course, discuss it. I think it's healthy to discuss this stuff. And I love hearing different people's rational takes on this stuff, especially stories that lead to buying authentic products. I think that's always the happy ending that people want to hear. So anyways, thanks so much for being a part of this episode with me. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.